Okay. One thing that y'all point out a lot is that I don't like a lot of endings to books. Which, fair, I did just make a video about it, but y'all point this out a lot. Another thing that you guys request a lot is that I make a video about endings that I actually did like, which I take offense. I mean, not really, but as I was compiling this list, it was a really long list, so I would like to defend myself here and say I like the endings to a lot of books. I just happen to be really vocal when I don't like endings, which, I mean, to be fair, it isn't uncommon because I am an opinionated human, especially when it comes to books. And I guess I do have a very specific type of ending that I really, really like. But regardless, my list for this video was way too long because there are so many book endings that I enjoy. So I condensed it, and this is my list of endings that I loved. And I want to start this video off with King. It's funny because everybody hates King's endings, it seems like, and multiple times in my videos I've said that I really like the ending of a few of the King books that I've read, and every time somebody comments either like laughing at me because, wow, King's never heard good job on that ending before, or someone's like mad at me thinking that I'm a lying reviewer because no one likes King's ending, so I clearly didn't actually read the book if I thought it was a good ending. So I don't know if I'm just going to be the odd man out. I'm still fairly new to Stephen King's works, but maybe I'm going to be the weirdo that when I like a King book, I'm going to love his endings, or maybe this is just some weird coincidence. But anyway, I've DNF'd 2 King books, but I've completed 2 books, I've completed 3 of his books. I've completed The Shining, which had a great ending, Pet Sematary, which had a fantastic ending, open-ended, a little bit more open-ended than I wanted, but not too, like, it gave me so much information that was so good, and then left me wanting more in the best way possible. And I wish there was a sequel to it because I want to know what came next, but just in such a good way. He did a good job with that ending, guys. I know some of y'all are gonna fight me on that, but that was a great ending. And Misery, which, you know, that was fine. So the book that makes the list obviously is gonna be Pet Sematary, but just saying, maybe I like King's endings, except for it. I've already been spoiled for that ending, and I know that's gonna suck. Tezz Duper Vil, I think is how it's pronounced. This is a French classic. I obviously read the translated version of it. And this is a tragedy, so just to be clear, if you hate tragedies, steer clear. But I loved this book. I was just telling my husband and my dad about it because they don't read a lot of classic. Well, Corey doesn't read any, but my dad reads some. And I was telling them about some of my favorite classics. And I was cracking up while I was summarizing these books because my favorite ones are so not happy. But anyway, I loved the ending to this book. I love a good tragedy, and I think that this one was great. Oh, okay, let's talk about Well of Ascension. So I actually really loved the ending to the Mistborn trilogy in general. I know that's kind of up for debate. Some people really didn't like the way that trilogy ended, but I thought it was a great ending. But my favorite book in the trilogy is Well of Ascension, and it definitely ended with a bang that I thought was so good. My favorite character in the series is a very big, important person in this book. And there is a mystery that you're kind of trying to solve along with the characters in this book, and I found that very satisfying. I mean, the way it wrapped up was very satisfying. Animal Farm, this is a recent read, so I won't go too deep into it because a lot of you have already heard me talk about it, but this is also a classic. This is a commentary on the civil union in World War II. This is about a farm of animals that are being mistreated by their farmers, so they have an uprising and kick the farmer out, and they run it, and then slowly the pigs take control, and it gets even worse than it was in the beginning. So I loved this book because the author's intent was very clear, and I really don't think that he could have made his point better than he did. I really think that this book was just executed in the best way it could have been done, and the ending had such a punch. I mean, you knew where it was going, but again, the way he executed it did exactly what he needed it to do. Ooh, okay. The Remnant Chronicles. So this is a series that does not match my reading taste, and despite that, I love it. So book 1 follows a runaway princess who doesn't want to get married to some strango, and so she runs away, as, you know, I just said. Book 2 focuses more on political intrigue, capture, manipulation, coming into one's own self. And book 3 is about war and having to own up to the consequences of everything that's happened up to this point and rising up to be exactly who you're supposed to be. So the reason I love this series so much is because of the main character. She doesn't start out well. She starts out pretty selfish, but faces so much character development and turns into one of my favorite female protagonists I've ever read. She faces a situation in book 3 that while I watched it go down, I was just like, man, to have this woman's strength. And what I love about this main character too is a lot of times a strong female character, especially in YA, but really just in general, a lot of times a strong female character means a woman that can beat all the boys at sword fighting and that's stronger and gruffer and better at being a man than men are. But I love her because she is strong in a different way. She has so much inner strength and she's so smart, and a lot of her bravery and strength comes from the decisions that she makes. Again, she doesn't start off the best in book 1, but through the series, her strength comes from her growth and from choosing what's best instead of what's best for her. And I just, gosh, I mean, especially for a YA fantasy, like this is the kind of person that I would want my kids reading and like be having as a role model and someone that they look up to. Ooh, okay, next let's talk about a character that I don't want my kids to look up to. The Picture of Dorian Gray. So this is a book about a man who is really pretty, and he realizes after someone paints his portrait, and he looks at the portrait and he goes, whoa, I'm hot. And then he gets really, really conceited, and his life spirals, and he gets dark. I really enjoyed this book the entire way through. I loved watching his descent, and the portrait in a way mirrors his soul. I'll leave it there. And the way this book ended it surprised me. I did not see it coming, and I loved it. It's really short, you should just read it. I'm running out of modern day books. I was trying to go back and forth here. Okay, I'll talk briefly about Cenote. This is another book that I've talked about quite a bit since reading it. It's only an hour long. The audiobook is only an hour long. It's a novelette, which means it's really short, and it's a horror, and it's about these two people that fall into a cenote, which is a cavern, and there's no way out, and they're trying to find a way out, and they're not alone. And the ending is horrific, and I loved it. Okay, Rebecca. So I loved the ending of this. Okay, so again, I've talked about this one recently and a lot. So Rebecca is a classic thriller, and think domestic thriller. And it is about a girl who marries a fella who's a widow, or a widower. And when she goes back to her manor, she finds out that there's this strange obsession and secrecy around her new husband's late wife. It turns out that maybe she was murdered, maybe she didn't die of such great causes, and she develops an obsession over Rebecca, the late wife, as well as an obsession over finding out how she died, and it ends in a way that I really liked. And the last one I'm going to talk about, just to kind of redeem myself a little bit from my last video is going to be Peter Pan, because now we're not talking about series enders and we're talking about just books that have great endings. So hello, Peter Pan. So this is my favorite book of all time. I have read it 3 or 4 times and we'll be reading it again very soon. Peter Pan means a lot to me. There's a lot of hidden depth to this story. It's so different from the Disney adaptation, as most classics are that Disney adapted, which is fine. But it's such a heart-wrenching story, especially as a parent. It's so beautiful and it has so much whimsy to it, but it also has so much depth. And my heart goes to Peter Pan so much. And I don't know how to talk about the ending of this without getting ridiculously sappy, but after all that time, should I spoil it a little bit? Mild spoilers for Peter Pan, I guess. It won't ruin the story if you listen to me talk a little bit about this. After all that time, they always kept their windows open. Not only did they always keep their windows open, but then they took in all the kids that needed a home. And they would have had Peter Pan too, were it not for that horrible prequel and what happened to him there. You know, as a parent, I'll always keep my windows open too. So I just really like the way this one wrapped up. Leave it there. Okay, there's the books that I love. Great endings. There are so many good endings. There are so many books with great endings. But these are some that I really super extra liked. I'd love to chat with you more about any of these in the comments. I have all these books linked in the description. Affiliate links, check them out. I post videos every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I'll see you guys again soon.